game.
Death plays a fundamental part in most games, but every time our playable character kicks the bucket, we usually have the option to immediately rectify our mistakes and do things over. However, if our character suffers permanent death, well, that's the ultimate penalty. The permadeath mechanic brings great significance to games, changing the way we play and challenging developers to invent new experiences.
So permadeath is the idea that when you're playing a game, you only have one life, and when that life is over, then that's the end of it, as it would in real life. I chose to play Far Cry 2 in permadeath because it was an idea that I wanted to try after seeing a conversation between two game designers. They were thinking about ways to make decisions that players make in games more permanent, more impactful, so that when you came up with an ethical decision, it would have more of a punch to the decision, so that the player thought about it a little bit more and considered it a bit better. So playing permadeath, my one goal was basically to stay alive. So I chose weapon loadouts and sort of strategies to keep me alive. So I opted for safe options like long-range sniper rifles. It just made every decision I made have weight and importance. So it started out being very, very tense. I was very anxious and apprehensive about even like the very first gunfight you get in, there's an opportunity to die. As I went along though, I sort of got used to playing in permadeath. I kind of got over the initial anxiety and just sort of settled into a rhythm of playing the game. When you're playing a normal first-person shooter or any other game, when you die, it's more of an inconsequential issue. It's just like a triviality almost. You just reload and you're back there again. When you're playing permadeath, there's a real consequence to finishing. It means that that's the end of your play session, you've got to start again, or you just don't play again at all. So it makes death much more interesting.
Historically, the idea of permadeath is not that new. After all, in reality, we all get just one life, and most non-electronic games don't allow us to resurrect our characters. It first popped up widely in the old-school RPGs of the roguelike genre. They featured randomly generated dungeon crawls with monsters and items bound together by ASCII text. Later, permadeath found its way into other RPG genres like MUDs, and soon it was appearing in more mainstream titles such as Diablo 2 and Torchlight. MMOs have dabbled with the mechanic over the years, with most discarding it because of player outrage and business sensibility. Recent games like Mass Effect 2 and Heavy Rain feature variations on the rule, but generally first-person narrative games have shied away altogether. Pure playable character permadeath is still stuck in the realms of hardcore geekery, and developers continue to grapple with it.
Permadeath can be a wonderful and powerful tool to invoke emotions, but by the same token, you've got to be very careful because it's inherently so risky that you may just deter all players from ever looking at your game ever again. The game itself is very simple. It's a mechanic whereby you put the player atop buildings, starting off very small and becoming very large as the game progresses. And in that, we test the player to see if they've got the ability to stay cool under pressure. And so by giving that player one life, and only one life, it really hones in and tests the player to see if they've got what it counts when it matters most. The anticipation is everything. So knowing that you only have one life puts so much more emphasis on where you currently are right now. I've seen players with shaky hands. I've seen players put the game away and say, I need to come back when I'm feeling a bit more prepared. It's been great to see. I've seen people say, you know, I actually feel anxious here. I feel nervous. It's been a very positive response to the actual gameplay itself.
In a gaming world where quick saves and regenerating health are the standards, a weak and token death may make the game a boring experience for a lot of people. But is permadeath the answer?
playing in permadeath mode changes what the game is. So you treat it differently. You treat it as one narrative, as a story. You treat it as like a life and death experience.
It shouldn't be used everywhere, and not every game that we make should be one single life, but I'm hoping that we get more of this style of game where the actions that I make as a player radically affect and alter the events and the outcomes and the story and the narrative in the game that I'm playing, because I want to feel more emotions than I currently do in games.
When I died at the end of permadeath, it was really affecting. I was at basically the second last fight in the entire game. It was the biggest and most difficult fight in the game. I think that I psyched myself out a little bit. I was too worried about it and ended up performing really badly. I realised I was about to die, and that realisation just totally paralysed me. Almost immediately after dying, I realised I could have played so much better in that one moment. It was that one little slip-up, which I knew, and I knew the whole time that was what was going to get me in the end. It was just going to be some silly little mistake or some moment where I get lazy, where I throw a grenade and it bounces off a tree and it lands at my feet and I don't have time to run away, or something like that. Something really silly is just going to kill me. And I thought that was really interesting because I think that's it kind of reflects the unpredictability of real-life death.